organisation and an integral part of the Moree community.
Madam Temporary Speaker,
Call
I seek leave to make a parliamentary statement.
Is leave granted?
Yes.
Leave is granted. Call the member for Balmain.
Thank you very much, Mr. Temporary Speaker, Madam Temporary Speaker. First of all, may I thank the Leader of the House and the government members for allowing me to make a contribution. I do appreciate that. Madam Temporary Speaker, I rise tonight on a matter which is of great importance to members in my local electorate. A lot of members of my local electorate have been working on the coal seam gas issue for some time, and recently I had a public meeting of over 250 local residents on the issue. And I'd like to start this evening by congratulating the members of the community who brought forward a petition to the House a bit earlier this evening. In particular, I recognise those members of Stop Coal Seam Gas Illawarra and Stop Coal Seam Gas Sydney groups. I understand there's also people attended in the public gallery, people of Camden, people of Putty, and those people have made a very significant commitment to improve their local communities and ensure that their water tables and their agricultural lands are protected from the worst excesses of coal seam gas. I also recognise the work of my colleagues federally and in the state, and also my colleague Jeremy Buckingham, who's led the campaign in Parliament where the coal seam gas moratorium bill was debated. But the reason why we are in this position today, Madam Temporary Speaker, is because of the former Labor government. The former Labor government failed in their due diligence on this industry before it issued exploration licences across 30% of the state. Labor did this despite there being substantial evidence from overseas of the risks of unconventional gas exploration and production, including substantial risk to underground and surface water and massive land use impacts from the thousands of wells and thousands of kilometres of pipelines and roads that are needed to make this industry function. There is also growing evidence that the fugitive emissions from unconventional gas production make it a significant climate risk. I recognise that the opposition now seems to have seen the error of their ways, but we can see that their previous record demonstrates that when they had the opportunity to act on coal seam gas, unfortunately it was not taken. Now, this government, unfortunately, has introduced a range of policies which haven't sought to stop coal seam gas exploration, but have sought to try to mitigate coal seam gas exploration. The government has recently announced the draft regional land use plans as a regulatory response to the industry, and our concern is, as I'm sure you're aware, Madam Temporary Speaker, is they don't absolutely rule out coal seam gas in some of our most prime and productive agricultural areas, and in particular, some of the most sensitive environmental areas. I acknowledge, as I said this afternoon at the rally with local members of the community, that these are draft plans. And it's up to the community now to lobby the Minister for Planning, who's sitting here at the table, and ensure that he hears the strong community voice that the draft regional land use plans need to be strengthened, and they need to ensure, as I've said, that the sensitive environmental areas and our most productive agricultural land in particular is protected from coal seam gas. Now, the moratorium on fracking has been something which has been raised, and our understanding is that on the issue of fracking there hasn't been a moratorium, but there has been a sort of agreement with the companies not to frack. We see that the moratorium on fracking should be more robust than that and should ensure that it's not just an agreement from industry, but there are strong regulations to rule out fracking. Now, we understand there's also been very significant issues with particular companies, and one of the most important issues has been the additional drilling many of you will know about in the catchment areas of the Illawarra Plateau and near Warragamba Dam, and the drilling at Putty, Fullerton Cove and on the Liverpool Plains. And one of the difficulties the government's response has been is the lack of very strong compliance action. The government has not taken effective enough action to deal with, for example, the report on a blowout incident at the gas well in Camden, or the almost 12 months it took to investigate complaints in Santos's Pilliga forest operations. And it's been the local activists, after months of campaigning, including taking private water samples, that the operator has now admitted to a dozen environmental incidents. Now, I acknowledge that the government recognises that a lot of these operators have not been doing the right thing, but it's critical that the government now take stronger action. I also note that fracking is now banned in France and South Africa and has substantial restrictions in part of the US with a major EPA study being undertaken. The coal seam gas industry, unchecked, will mean a massive industrialisation of regional New South Wales. The practices of this industry have demonstrated that cannot be trusted, and increasing evidence shows the industry is bad for the environment, our agriculture and land water. I support the demands of the petitioners that were here earlier this evening and call on the government to implement the moratorium and apply a ban that has real teeth when it comes to fracking. I encourage people in the interim to contribute to these draft land use plans, to make their voices heard to the Minister and ensure strong action can be taken. Thank you very much.
Long 3 minutes. The Minister.
Look, I'd like to thank the member for Balmain for his contribution and to indicate that the government is quite serious about trying to strike the right balance here and to make sure that strategic agricultural lands are in fact protected, but also the lands of high biodiversity value should of course be protected. The process that we've actually had so far has involved the Nature Conservation Council and the ACF as stakeholders in the stakeholders reference group. I note that that doesn't mean that they necessarily agree with us. In fact, in many areas they don't, but they've had an active role and we thank them for their professional and considered input. I also note that the strategic agricultural land draft plans are just that, they're draft. We're looking for input from the community to make sure that they work. We really do expect at the end of this process that we will have, well, we know at this stage that they are the toughest standards anywhere in Australia for CSG, but what we're hoping to see is plans that really do protect particularly the areas that we all intuitively know should be protected, the Liverpool Plains, the viticulture areas, the thoroughbred industry, and of course we anticipate that there is already protection in place for many of those areas of biodiversity, but we're looking at all those issues. We intend to get the balance right, and I thank again the honourable member for his input.